Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope my voice is clearly audible. You can simply raise your hands to confirm this. All right, great. So, guys, we are waiting for a few more minutes to for other candidates to join the session, right? And we'll begin our session in 5 minutes. All right, once again, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to your sessions. Right, so today will be your first session on technical discussions, and this is where your sessions will begin. Right, and I hope my voice is clearly audible. Right, you can simply raise your hands to the for the confirmation of this. All right. All right, great. So, guys, we'll be having a very general discussion today, right? Based on the basics of mathematics, the foundation of mathematics, right? We'll start with one of the simplest topics, and then proceed ahead further, uh, talking about the various aspects and principles of machine learning, right? We'll start with the very basics. Right. So talking about the agenda for today, we'll be discussing about, we'll start with, of course, the basic foundation of mathematics, right? Starting with the addition, right? Discussing about the subtraction, followed by multiplication, followed by division, right? Moving ahead with the power functions, exponential functions, right? And then discussing about the mod mass, right? And if the time permits, we'll discuss about, let's say, percentages and other topics, right? So let's begin. And I hope the first four topics, right? The addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And this is very well, everyone already knows this, but still we'll discuss this, right? For the ones who are purely from the non-technical background, this will help them to build the foundations of mathematics, applying the very basic operations in mathematics. Right. So talking about addition is nothing but it is, let's say, sum of two numbers or adding multiple numbers here. Right. So this is not but sum of the numbers. Right. And just to give you this idea, you are free to ask your doubts in the chat section. All right. Every one of you is free to mention your doubts in the chat section. Right. So here, talking about addition, right? So we have a dedicated function. Let's say we'll simply mention the definition here, right? And we'll talk about the function related to this that is available in Excel, right? I hope everyone is very familiar with the interface of Excel, right? You can simply raise your hands for this confirmation. All right, great. If you're not familiar, you could mention the same in the chat section. All right. I see a lot of you mentioning about you're not familiar about the interface of the Excel here, right? Not a problem. I'll simply walk you through, right? So your basically your Excel sheet is divided into multiple cells where you can represent your data in the form of rows and columns, right? So for example, let's say A, B, C, D. These are basically various columns into an Excel sheet, and 1, 2, 3, 4, as mentioned here, right? These are your independent rows, right? These are your rows. Those are highlighted, and there are multiple rows and columns in Excel. Right? We'll talk about what exactly is the number of cells that is present, what are the number of rows and number of columns in Excel that is present, right? Apart from this, you have these home buttons. Let's say you're in the menu bar, you have your home button, insert, page layout, formulas, data, review, and view tabs where multiple functionalities are present, right? Let's say simple cut, copy, paste functions are present in the left hand side of the home tab, right? Followed by a general formatting of the text, right? Let's say this is the font name, font number. You can increase or decrease the size of font. You can highlight a color of the text, or you can highlight a cell background, right? You can mention the borders. You can convert your text into bold, italic, or underline the text as per your requirement, right? This is the alignment tab here. In alignment, you have two types of alignment. First is the vertical alignment, second is the horizontal alignment, right? So vertical alignment is when you can align your data at the top of the cell or at the bottom of the cell or exactly in the middle of the cell, right? And the horizontal alignment is basically when you want to place your text either on the left side of the text cell or on the right side of the cell or exactly at the center, right? Then you have, how do you want to represent your text here, whether it's normal like this, right? Or you want to represent your, let's say some of the numbers is the cell that we are taking here, and or whether you want to align this like this, right? It's angle anti-clockwise, this is angle clockwise, right? It's vertical alignment like this, or you want to mention rotate up or down, mention it like this, or rotate the text down like this. All of it can be done, right? So we'll be mentioning our text purely in the horizontal format, right? Like this. All right. And the amount of spacing that you need before you can start the text, right? On the left, or if you want to change a paragraph within a text, then you can use the next option here, right? Next comes is, this is basically word wrapping. Let's say if I decrease the width of the cell, which is less than the length of the text itself, right? So here word wrapping can be used. You can simply click here and the complete text height will be adjusted in accordance to the length of your text so that everything is displayed, right? The next option here is the merge cells option. If you want, you can merge multiple cells into one single cell like this, right? So this becomes a single cell now, right? This becomes a single cell with a combination of multiple cells here, right? So this is the merge function that we can use. Right. This is the formatting of the text again, right? So for example, let's say if I write a number here, right? Let's say if I write a number, for example, 100 or 1000, right? So this number is basically formatted as general. You can format this into various different data types, right? For example, you can format it as a number so that numerical calculations can be applied on this, right? You can format it as a currency or an accounting number, right? So that, let's say this will be represented like this with the currency symbol, right? You can represent the same data as a date, right? So this is the date that it represents. This is the short form of the date. This is the long form of the date, right? You can represent the same number as time, all right? Then there are multiple other formats like percentage. You can represent like this, right? Or fraction, you can represent it like this. There are multiple formatting options that you can apply. We'll discuss about this formatting uh, from time to time as we discuss on multiple data sets. All right. Now, moving on, we have the conditional formatting or the formatting of a range as table or adjusting the cell styles, right? These also we'll discuss. right? Very soon, like the conditional formatting is used to highlight the cells based on multiple conditions, based on multiple rules, right? And here we have format data as table. So this is basically a kind of color coding that is applied on your complete data so that each of your rows is differentiable visually, right? Then we have cell styles. Any kind of styling that you want to apply to your cell, you can, of course, use these kind of color coding, right? Next, we have insert, delete, and format option. Insert is basically when you want to insert sheets or insert multiple cells, right? Or insert sheet columns or sheet rows, right? Followed by a delete option, like how we have insert, just opposite of this, we have delete, right? So delete is also used to delete cells, delete a sheet, or let's say delete entire table rows, table columns, etc. Right, next is the formatting option. You can adjust the row height or the column width, right? Or you can auto fit this based on the length of the text that is available, right? All of these, you can hide, unhide cells, right? You can rename a sheet, move or copy a sheet. You can change the color of the tab that you're using for the sheet. You can lock your sheet or protect your sheet or format the cells, right? And then here we have this auto sum function, right? Average, count, maximum, minimum. There are a few functions that will give you a quick overview of any column, right? Next is Next is these are the flash fill options that we have, right? We'll discuss about this very soon, what flash fill is and what is exactly the usage of flash fill, right? And then we have these clear options, whether you want to clear the content of a cell or clear the formatting of a cell. All of these things can easily be done using this clear, right? Then we have these sorting options, whether you want to sort the data largest to smallest or smallest to largest, or and define any rule for sorting, right? Then you can filter your data. A lot of things can be done. Find and select option is here where you can use find and replace. You can add data validation, conditional formatting, right? You can add comments to your cells. You can simply define constants, series objects, etc. Right, moving on, we have this insert tab here, right? In insert tab, the first thing that we have is table related functions, right? For example, if you want to create a pivot table out of the data that is available, you can do that. You can format a data as a table. You can see recommendations of pivot tables from Excel itself, right? Then we have these insert options for pictures. If you want to insert a picture in Excel, this is also possible. If you want to insert shapes, this is also possible, right? These are different shapes that we can use to insert in our sheets, right? Then we have these kind of flowcharts or hierarchy or process or cycle that you want to define, right? Next, we have, if you want to take insert screenshots here, right? That can be done. Add-ins, if any additional add-in is required, you can do that, right? Let's say you can see all the my add-ins function here that can be added, right? Then we have various integrations that can be done to this Excel workbook, right? Next is the charts section, right? Where you can see various types of charts here that you can plot in Excel, like the histogram, we have line plot, right? We have pie plot, we have scatter plot, right? We have Pareto graph, right? This is a histogram, this is tree map, right? We have sunburst. There are multiple types of formatting, waterfall, stock, surface, right? And then we have these trend lines, which is combination of more than one type of chart. Like, for example, this is the combination of line chart along with the bar plot, right? And then we have pivot charts defined for pivot tables, right? Now, moving on, you can also represent your data of spark lines, right? We'll discuss about these plots very soon, right? Then we have, if you want to add a new comment, if you want to add a text box, if you want to write an equation here, right? These are the equations that can be written, multiple mathematical equations that you want to write, right? So you can simply write this in the form of a script and it will be represented as an equation, right? So I'll simply remove this for now. Right, next here we have the page layout. This is about the layout of the page, right? About various themes that can be used on this page, right? Various types of color coding that can be applied, right? The various types of fonts that can be used here on the entire sheet, right? Then the margins that you want to leave before your Excel sheets, actual Excel sheet starts, right? Then we have orientation, whether you want to have a portrait or the landscape orientation. Then we have the size of the sheet, right? So usually we use A4 size. I hope everyone knows what is an A4 size, right? This is the standard size of a paper, right? There are multiple types of paper that we have, starting with let's say A3, A4, A5, A6. Then we have B4, B5, right? There are multiple standard sizes of paper. Those are available, and we usually use A4 size. Right, then we have these print areas. If you want to print a particular area uh, of the Excel sheet, you can use this function. If you want to add breaks to the pages, that can be done, right? If you want to set a background, if you want to set print titles, set up pages, right? If you want to adjust the height and width, this can be done. Then we have grid lines and headings. Basically these are in view selected, right? The headings are nothing but these A, B, C, D that we are seeing here, or 1, 2, 3, 4 that we are seeing here, right? So if I untick on this, you won't be able to see all of it. Right. So I'll be clicking on this so that every one of you can see. Right. Of course, guys, you need to install Microsoft Excel in your system, right? For to use Microsoft Excel and all the operations that it will be doing. All right, so it's always advised to install the latest version. The latest version of Excel that is available is Excel 365. Right, and please note that Excel is not free of cost. It is paid software, hence you might have to make a purchase to be able to use full functionalities of Excel. All right, same goes with grid lines here. These are the grid lines that you are seeing. If I untick on this, you won't be able to see it, and a blank page appears in front of you. Right, so this is about the grid lines here. Next, we have the formulas tab, where the various types of formulas are present. Right, so we have various types of formulas. Those are collectively mentioned in a category of formulas. Like we have financial functions. These are some of the financial functions. Those are available in Excel, right? Then we have these logical functions, if and else or not, these kind of logical functions. Then we have text related functions like the left, right, number, value, etc. Right? These are some of the text related functions. Then we have date and time related function. All right. Then we have lookup and references related functions like the VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, etc. Right. Then we have mathematical and trigonometric related functions. These are some of the functions. All right. And then we have other functions as well, like the statistical functions. These are some of the statistical functions that we have, right? We'll be using most of these functions in your sessions. All right, next we have the engineering related functions here that can be used to perform the technical calculations, right? Then we have cube related functions here, information related function, right? Then we have compatibility related functions here, right? And then we have functions to import data from a website, right? So which is mentioned in web functions. All right, then we have other tab here, which is name manager, right? Define name, these kind of functions. These are just an integration of the functions, right? And this is to find the dependency of a formula that is being used, right? So let's say if you're using a formula, what values or references it is using, this trace precedents can be used to get the reference of those cells, right? In a similar way, trace dependents can also be used to get the references of the cells those are being used. to get the outputs. All right. Now, moving on, we have, let's say if you want to see a particular formula, you can click on this show formula here after using it, right? So that you get to know what exactly is the formula you're using, right? And if any corrections are required, you can do that. Next is error checking. So this will help you to understand the error. If any function is giving you any error, you can easily get that by simply tracing the error or checking the error. All right, moving on with the calculation options here, right? So there are multiple calculation options available, automatic or manual, right? Then we have calculate now and calculate sheet. We'll discuss this as and when we'll be using these functions, right? Then we have this data tab here. Data tab is majorly used for Power Queries or to combine the data from multiple sheets, multiple sources. All of it can be used using Power Get Data and Queries and Connections tab, right? So you can get data from multiple sources, from an HTML page, from the SQL server, from a database, right? Or from, let's say, multiple other sources of data, right? Then using queries and connection, you can simply combine all the data and filter as per your requirement. All right. Then we have other options here to perform various types of analysis, right? For example, we have text to columns, columns to text. This is a simple transpose function, right? Then we have flash fill. We'll be discussing about this soon, right? Then we have functions to remove duplicate values, right? To apply data validation, to consolidate your data, right? To perform any kind of what if analysis, right? If you want to group, ungroup the data, that can also be done, right? If you want to find a subtotal of a given data, you can use subtotal function here. Then we have analysis tools, right? And this data analysis tab, right? So we'll be using this very soon. All right. So guys, I can understand this might be very, elementary for most of you, but yes, we have attendees who are from now purely non-technical background, and this has to be carried out so that everyone is on the same page before we get started with the basics of data science, right? I will surely appreciate your, right? I'll surely appreciate your patience here. All right. Now, moving on, we have this reviews tab here where you can review the basically all the operations that you have done, right, in one form or the other. Then we have this view tab here, right? So view tab, as it can be seen, there are multiple things that can be done here, right? From the page layout to whether you want to see something or not, right? It's just an extension of page layout, the zoom of this current page or current sheet, right? And then we have freeze panes. If you want to freeze a particular cell or top n cells, that can be done, right? If you want to hide, split, switch windows, or if you want to record or use a macro, that can also be done. All right. So yes, this is about the basic interface of Excel, right? And we'll be using most of the functionalities here as and when we progress through the learnings. All right. Now, moving on. Right, moving on, let's discuss about the functions here, or this mathematical part of the functions, right? And let's see what all are the concepts and the relevant functions available in Excel to do the same operation. All right. Now, let's say talking about our first function, which is the addition, right? This will basically help us to understand the sum of the numbers, or if you want to get sum of a few numbers those are present in different cells, you can simply perform an addition operation to get the output of the numbers here. And this can easily be done using the sum function in Excel, right? You're free to perform this manually as well, right? But this is not at all recommended because when you'll be using this on a large data set, manually writing all the numbers could be a tedious task, which is why we can directly use the sum function in Excel. Right? The sum function will help you to uh, calculate the addition of numbers in Excel, right? And subtraction, as we know, right? Subtraction, as we know, all right? So subtraction is basically when you want to subtract two numbers, right? So this is nothing but when you subtract two numbers here, right? This operation can be termed as subtraction, and there is basically no function available in Excel to perform this operation. Why there is no function available? Because subtraction is a task that will be applied only on two numbers at a time, right? It is not a repetitive process that can be done, right? For example, it says sum of numbers is basically a repetitive process. You can add one number after the other, and this is a continuous chain that will begin, right? But this is not the case with subtraction, which is why we do not have any function defined for it. If you want to perform subtraction in Excel, it has to be performed manually, right? You can easily perform subtraction manually by simply using the minus sign that is available in your keyboard. Right now, moving on, we have the multiplication of number. This will help us to find the product of numbers, right? Simply multiply multiple numbers here and you'll be able to get the product, right? And for this, we have a product function already available in Excel, right? So we can use this function to find the product of numbers. Right? Division is basically to find again the division of numbers. And again, here two numbers are involved and we do not, it's not a repetitive process, which is why, again, we do not have any kind of function that is defined in Excel for this. Right? Power function are the functions that will help us to multiply a number by itself n number of times, right? So for example, let's say if I want to multiply 2 with itself, right? Let's say if I do this only once, right? So this is basically termed as square of 2, right? So we can use a power function to calculate this. Or if you want to calculate 2 10 number of times, right? Which can be represented as 2 raised to the power of 10. All right. So again, we can use power function for this to get the final output, right? So this is nothing but when you want to calculate a number raised to a power, right? Number raised to a power, and you can easily use the power function here. Right, talking about the exponential functions are, let's say these are one of the most important functions that you'll be using in machine learning, right? These are exponential functions, and exponential functions basically represent a trend, and trend is basically either in moving upwards or downwards, right? Where the changes are happening very drastically, and these changes are recorded by this particular function, right? So this is an exponential function, and this is nothing but exponent of a number, right? And it's represented as e raised to the power of x, right? Where e is a constant, right? E is a constant that will hold the value of 1.7 roughly, right? And x is a variable here, right? So instead of using power functions and mentioning the value of e every time, we can directly use the exponential function and do the calculation, right? So exp is the function that we'll be using to calculate the exponent of a number, right? So you will be using this function very frequently when your data science begins, right? So if you see here in insert tab, if we go to the symbols, okay, right? So if we go to this equations here, right, we see this function e raised to the power of x in professional, right? So this is the exponential function that is majorly used, right? Or in script as well, we can see e raised to the power of x, right? So this is basically the exponential function that is used here. All right. So this is how your exponential functions are represented. All right. Now, moving on. All right. So we'll be discussing the examples of same. You're advised to wait until we'll be discussing the examples of each one of them. Right. So you don't have to worry about it. All right. Next is the board mass. Let's say board mass is basically a rule that is defined, because let's say if operation of, or if uh, if any one of these operations is to be performed, right, out of one of these operations has to be performed, it is very easy to understand how the calculations will carry out. But let's say if there are more than one number that is involved here, or one type of operation that is involved, how are we going to execute the operation to get the final output, right? So for this, BODMAS rule is used, right? In BODMAS, right? So in BODMAS, what happens is, let's say, I'll simply mention this. The BODMAS majorly stands for brackets, right? Followed by off or order, right? Followed by D stands for division, right? M stands for multiplication, right? S stands for subtraction, and finally A stands for addition. Multiplication and addition, right? So right, so this is the fraction of a whole that we are talking about. All right, so for let's say BODMAS, it's right, so which is why no function is available for BODMAS, and percentages also there's no function available. It's a simple division of operation that we will be performing, right? And it's about changing the formatting here to percentages. We can simply represent a number as a percentage, right? So we'll talk about this, and let's take a few examples here. All right, so let's see an example of each one of these here. All right, so for this, what we'll do is let's take an example here, right, where we'll simply perform addition of numbers. All right, and addition can easily be performed using the sum function here. Let's say we have a few numbers here. Right, so let's say we have a few numbers randomly. I'm simply picking these numbers. I want the sum of these numbers, right? So we can simply use an equal to sign. Every formula in Excel basically starts with an equal to symbol, right? And this equal to will be used before every function, right? Then we have to write the name of the function. So as soon as I press S, right? So this is the sum function we are going to use. So as soon as I press S, every function that starts with S will simply list down here, right? Then if I press SU, then all the functions with SU will list out, and then we have to finally use the sum function, right? So this is the sum function that is majorly used. You can directly input numbers here. Let's say if I want the sum of 2 and 3, this can be done, right? Like this, and I'll get the output as 5, 2 plus 3, right? Otherwise, let's say if you want to get the sum of a series of numbers, this can be represented by simply using the reference of the cell. The reference of a cell is basically, let's say if I use equal to and take the reference as the cell that contains 8, right? So the value will be taken from any other cell here, right? So if I click enter here, 8 is being taken from cell G11, right? So this is how the referencing of cells are used here. So we'll be using the same referencing of cell inside the sum function, right? We can simply select the series of data like this, right? And sum of all of these will be calculated using this formula, right? So once I click enter, this is 35, right? You can manually do this calculation and you'll end up getting 35 as the output, right? So this is how sum function can be used. To find the sum of cells of, let's say, values of 7, 5, and 2. All right, so 2, this can also be done. You can simply mention each of these cells separated by a comma, and you'll get the output as 14, right? So 7 plus 5 plus 2 is 14. All right, so this is how you can easily get the output using sum functions. All right, now let's talk about the subtraction function. So subtraction, we do not have any function here, right? To subtract two numbers, we simply have to do this manually, right? And how we can carry out this manually? Let's say I want to find the output when 6 is subtracted from 8, right? So for this, I'll again use equal to here, mention 8 minus 6, right? So this is the operation that has to be performed manually, because I cannot perform this operation in a series, right? And usually we do not perform subtraction or division operations for a series of numbers, which is why we will not have a function defined for this, right? And we have to do this manually. All right. Same goes with the multiplication, right? When we talk about the multiplication, there's a product function that we can use. And similar to how sum function is used with separate numbers, product function is also used with separate numbers. Let's say if I want to find the product of 3 and 4, I can manually mention this here. I'll get the output as 12, right? Otherwise, if I want to find the product of series of numbers, right? So I can do that as well. The multiplication of all of these numbers will be available with us using the product function, right? So 40320 is the output, right? So this is how you can use the product function talking about the division function. So we do not have any function for division. If you want to perform division, you have to do this manually again, right? Let's say I want to divide 8 by 5, right? So I can simply manually mention this 8 by 5 like this. So it's 1.6, right? Or you can take the reference of cells, let's say cell containing 8 divided by a cell containing 5, right? So again, you'll get the same output as we have got using the manual calculations. All right. So these are a few functions that is available with us. All right. Now talking about the power functions. So power functions are usually used when you want to find the power of a number. Let's say a number raised to the power of something, right? So let's say we'll simply find the square of numbers here, right? The square of a number is basically when a number is multiplied by itself. All right. So when you multiply a number by itself, it's termed as square here, right? So let's do this calculation manually first. So we can do this using product function as well. We can do this, let's say, we can do this using manual calculations as well, right? So, but since we are working on Excel, it's advised to use the functions those are defined already, right? Because let's say for squares or cubes, you can perform this operation manually. But if you want to perform this on large extent of numbers, then formulas needs to be used eventually, right? So let's calculate the squares using the product function, right? And then we'll be calculating the squares using the power function. All right, so let's find this output or square of 2 by simply using the product function, right? So I'll be using the product function here and I'll multiply. This is the first number that I'll multiply with itself, right? So there are two numbers involved and both are same numbers. We'll eventually get the output as 4, right? So 2 multiplied with 2 is 4, right? Next is 3 multiplied by 3 is 9, right? In a similar way, let's say if we talk about this is 4 multiplied by 4 and the output is 16, right? In the similar way, 5 multiplied by 5 is again 25. All right. Next, 6 multiplied by 6 is 36, right? 7 multiplied by 7 is 49, right? And 8 multiplied by 8 is nothing but 64. Right, so this is how you can simply get the square of numbers very easily. Right, we can do this using the let's say power functions as well. So let's do that. Squares using power function. Right, so let's say we have this power function here. This power function will help us to find a number raised to the power of another number. Right, so here two inputs are required. First is the number and second is the power. Right, so power will be 2 here and number for square of 2 will be 2, right? So this will be the number G5 which contains 2 and the power will be 2 again, right? So this is how we can easily calculate the square of a number. And same goes with the next part here. We will take G6 raised to the power of 2, right? Which is nothing but G6 multiplied with itself. So since G6 contains the value of 3, it's 3 multiplied by itself, which is 9. Right. And again, we can directly, use the feature of flash fill here to get all the relevant outputs. All right. So this is how we can directly use the power function to get the outputs. All right. And the flash fill that we have used here, right? The flash fill that we have used here, let's say if we talk about the operations that we have done, right? This is basically flash fill we are using, right? So how flash fill works is basically, let's say if we are using a power function and using a reference cell. A reference cell is basically if we are taking cell from another value. So that particular cell is considered as a reference cell, right? So in flash fill, what happens is, let's say for this particular cell, I've taken G5, right? So once I move one cell down here, right? Here also from 3 to it will, since in this particular cell it was taking 2, right? So once we have moved one cell down here also it will move one cell down, right? So instead of 2, it will be taking 3 now. If we click here, we can clearly see it's taking G6 instead of G5 now, and it's multiplying 3 with itself, right? This is basically referred to as the flash fill, right? You can double click at the right bottom corner to get the flash fill of all the numbers here, right? So flash fill for my system, it's not working until I edit these numbers, right? So let me do that very quickly. So now it's working perfectly fine, and this is how it will work in your system as well. All right, so flash fill, this is exactly what I've explained just now. Flash fill is basically filling out the cells automatically based on the referencing that we are taking and based on the total length that is available with us. All right, so this is how you can simply use flash fill to get the outputs. All right, so this is exactly how power functions work. Right, let's talking about the exponential functions. Let's find, right, talking about the exponential functions. Exponential functions are majorly represented as e raised to the power of x. Right, now what happens here is, let's say in exponential functions, we majorly use the formula of e raised to the power of x, right? And this is one of the important functions in Excel and in mathematics as well. Right, so these exponential functions are nothing but it's e raised to the power of x, right? So we can simply use the exp, which is the exponential function, right? And it only requires one part, which is the power, right? Since the number is already available with us, right? The value of e, which is 1.7 roughly, right? So this will be 1.7 raised to the power of 2, raised to the power of 3, raised to the power of 4, and so on, right? So we'll simply use the reference here. Let's take this number and see the output, right? And followed by the rest of the other numbers. It can easily be calculated using flash fill here, right? So this way we'll be working on this and we can easily find the output. So what exactly is the use of exponential functions? You'll understand this when we'll dive into machine learning concepts, right? So this is just to give you an overview about these functions here. All right, next is the board mass. Next is the board mass here. Board mass is basically a rule that is defined for equations where more than one operation is involved, right? Let's say here, if we talk about this equation here, right, this equation involves majorly calculation of more than one operation, all right? And if you see this equation clearly, right, this is nothing but 36 divided by 6 multiplied by 3 plus 2 raised to the power of 2 minus inside bracket we have 3 plus 5, right? So which of these operation needs to be performed first and which is later is decided by the board mass rule, right? And as we have seen, this is the order of execution. The brackets will be solved first, which means everything that is present inside the bracket will be resolved first. Moving on with, let's say, off or order functions. Order functions are nothing but the power functions here. So 2 raised to the power of 2 will be solved next, right? Next, division will be solved, followed by multiplication, then addition, and then subtraction, right? So this is the order of execution that will have. Right. So guys, it's completely okay if you're not able to understand the exponential functions. You'll get the better perspective of this when we'll dive into machine learning, right? Because until and unless I tell you about the usage of a function, telling you about how it's calculated is really makes not much of a sense, right? Which is why I am not emphasizing on explanation of this particular function. Right. So you can wait until your sessions begin. All right. And this will help you to understand this particular function in a very broader way, right? The application of the exponential function is limitless. All right. So talking about the BODMAS function here, all right. So talking about the BODMAS here, this is basically the equation that we have, right? In middle, this this basically is 2 raised to the power of 2, right? This is how it's written mathematically, right? This is how it's written mathematically. And let's say, I believe rest of the part of the equation is easy to understand, right? This backslash here is the division operator that is used. All right, so this is the equation that we'll be taking in as an example to solve for the output. All right, so let's talk about this here. Let's say if I add an equal to sign before this, right? Let me copy this. All right, and let's say if I put an equal to sign before this and paste this, I'll be able to get the final output. This is the final output of this equation. All right, so let's say how did we get this output? We can solve this one by one, right? So here, as BODMAS says, everything that is present inside the bracket will be solved first, right? So let's solve this. Let us solve this, and let's mention 8 here. 3 plus 5 is 8, right? So which is why we have mentioned this 8 here, right? Next is, all right, next is, let's say this is 8 already, right? And here we'll solve 2 raised to the power of 2, which is nothing but 4, right? So 4 comes here. Next, if we talk about the next operation is the division operator, which means 36 divided by 6 will be solved next, right? So 36 divided by 6 is nothing but we'll end up getting 6, right? And this is not 9, this is 8, right? Now, next multiplication will be resolved. So 6 multiplied by 3 will be solved next, right? 6 into 3 is nothing but 8. So let's use, all right, 6 into 3 is 18. This is resolved. Next addition will be applied, right? So if we talk about addition here, 18 plus 4 is nothing but 22, right? So let me paste this here. And this is 22, 18 plus 4. And finally, all right, so this is 22 minus 8. right? So let's say I'll put double minus, right? So that it's not taking or it's not changing the format of this. And finally, 22 minus 8 is nothing but 14, right? So this is how we end up getting 14 as the final output, right? And this is the order of execution. If you apply any other order of execution, you'll get a separate output, which will of course be wrong. All right. So this is how we can directly use, right? And this is how we can directly use to mention the final output. Right. So I hope everyone is able to perform this or understand this, how exactly we are performing the board mass, right? Applying various operations at once. Right. You can simply raise your hands to confirm this so that we can move ahead with the next topic. All right. So guys, okay, board mass, right? So the exponential is a constant value, right? It will not change with change of the values, right? It's a constant value and it's a universal constant, right? So it's a universal constant that remains same. Right? So guys, it's advised not to perform all these calculations or not to practice along with the session, right? Because uh, let's say while we are working on the session, although this is very basic we are working on, right? But as we move on, things will start getting complex, right? So it's never advised to practice along with the session. You have to practice by following the recording of this particular session once it's uploaded in your LMS, right? Because things in machine learning, it will get complex at very early stage, right? So you just have to devote enough time to go through the recordings and practice along with the sessions, right? So practice along with the recording of the session and not with the actual live session. All right. Now, moving on, let's take a use case of this, right? So that every one of you will be able to understand in a better way, right? So let's take a use case. What I'll do here is, right? What I do here is, let's take an example where we have, you can say this is the data set of a class, right? Where an exam was conducted, and these are the respective scorings that we have into multiple subjects by various students present in the class, right? So this is the data that we have, and this is just a randomly generated data. This is used for demonstration purposes in the session, right? So let's discuss about this data set and let's see what all operations or what all conditions we can define so that we can get the outputs here. All right. Now here, let's say uh, just to mention that all of these marks are evaluated out of 100, right? Which is why we'll have another column called total, or let's say we'll have overall total, right? Overall total is basically the column that will contain the total marks out of which these marks have been evaluated. So overall total will be, let's say for mathematics, it's 100 because the marks is evaluated out of 100. For physics as well, it will be 100. And for chemistry as well, it will be 100, which is why we'll have 300 as the overall total for all these students, right? Again, I can use flash fill here to represent the same value in every column. All right. Now, on this, what we'll do is the first thing that we need to do is we need to find what percentage every student has scored. Right. So I hope this is a kind of operation you had been doing throughout your school days. Right. So let's do that one more time to get a better idea of the functions that we have discussed today. All right. So to calculate the percentage, there are two things that is required. Right. So if you see the formula for percentage is majorly defined as the, let's say, total marks scored divided by, let's say, the overall total. Right. So total marks scored is nothing but the total marks scored by every individual student, which will be different for every student. Right. It will be addition of all these numbers here. All right. So here, since it's an addition, we can use some function, right? And it's for division, we do not have any function here. So we'll simply manually divide that and get the percentage, right? Although in the formula of percentage, you also have a multiplication of 100, but in Excel, we can simply change the formatting of the number and it will be represented as a percentage. Right. So here, the first thing that we'll do is we'll perform this operation in 2 single steps, right? And then we'll combine both of these steps to perform the operation in one single cell, right? For every student. So let's do that. And let's say we'll find the total scored by the student in this particular column, where we'll simply add these 3 numbers together and get the final output, right? So this can easily be done using the sum function here. I'll simply mention like this, right? And this is 249 that is added up, right? Talking about the next student here, we'll take B3 to D3, which is 56 plus 69 and 55, right? Which is nothing but 180, right? I can do that for the rest of the students here. 289, 209, then we have 221, and finally we have 212, right? And these all scores are evaluated out of 100 for every individual subject, right? So the overall total that we have is 300. Right? So guys, I can see a few of you are raising hands. There is absolutely no need to raise hand. And if you have any, query or difficulty, you could let me know in the chat section. All right. Now here, what we'll do is we'll simply find the percentage, right? The percent score by every individual student here. Right. And here we can see right. So here we can see that the percentage can easily be calculated by dividing this number with 300. Right. So we'll perform this operation here. We'll simply select this number and divide it by 300. All right. So this is 0.83. I'll perform the same operation here for every individual student, and we see different values popping up. Right. And these are fraction of values, which will be between 0 to 1. All right. And I can select this data and change the formatting from here from general to percentage. Right. And you'll see the values represented in percentage, showing the percent symbol as well. right? So this is how you can easily calculate the percentage of values. Right, so this is one of the use case where you can easily use the sum function and get the output, right? So let's perform the same operation with one single line, right? Or all the calculations performed in one single cell. All right, so let's say I'll name this as percentage. And here, what we'll do is we'll use the sum function first, and we'll add these three numbers, right? Once this is right, so once this is completed, we'll simply divide this by the overall total that we have, right? And this is again the same value that we were getting for the numbers here. I'll use the flash fill here to simply execute this. And I can apply the same percentage formatting here. Otherwise, what can be done is I can simply select any one of these cells and copy the formatting from copy formatting option, right? I'll simply copy the formatting and paste it here, right? So the formatting will be applied as it is applied on the percent column, right? So this is how you can simply apply the formatting and represent your data. Right, so basically, let's say here we have performed using these two columns, one operation at a time. But here in the column H, we have performed this calculation with one single line. All right, so this is how it could be done. All right, here, let's take one more example. Right, and in this example, what we'll do is, let's say we have the list of products here, right? I can simply mention them as product one. Say product underscore one. Then we have, let's say product underscore two, and so on. Let's say we have a few products listed out like this, right? Let's say 10 products like this, up to 1 to 10, right? Then we have, you can say, we have some selling price for this, right? The selling price is maybe you can start with, 100, maybe 110, then we have 130, then 156 or 165, right? Then we have 867, we have 900, then we could have 1056. These are just random values that I'm generating, right? And let's say 934, then we have 489. So these are the selling price of these individual products, right? And here I'm simply mentioning the tax bracket into which this product falls, right? So let's say the tax bracket for the first product is 28%, right? So I'll simply mention this as 0.8 to 8, right? This 28%, I'll simply change the formatting of this to a percentage, right? So 28%, this is maybe the 18%. Let's say this is 30% tax bracket. This is 5%. This is maybe 2.5%, right? This 2.5%. This is maybe 9%. This is 8.5%. Then we have 10%. And let's say we have a product with 50% of tax bracket. And then we have a product with maybe 33% of tax bracket, right? So what I'll do here is I'll simply increase the numbers here after the decimal places to get the exact value, right? And here your task is to find the final price that the customer has to pay, which is nothing but the maximum retail price, right? Your task is to find the maximum retail price out of this. All right, so we can easily perform this operation, right? We can easily perform this operation using the functions that we have learned. which is the combination of sum and product functions here. All right, and how this could be done is, let's do this for the first product here. I'll simply use equal to, right? And to find the MRP, I hope everyone knows, right, how to add the tax on the selling price to get the final MRP. You can simply raise your hands to confirm this, right? And if you are not aware about it, you can mention the same in the chat section, right? So I'll get the idea whether there's a need to explain this or not, right? Because this is something that is on day-to-day basis that we do. All right, so I can see a lot of you asking for an explanation of this, right? So basically what happens is the selling price is the price at which the production house or someone who's making the production is ready to sell the price, and the tax is basically applied by the government on various sectors of or various types of products, right? So this is the tax bracket that is defined, and you have to apply that amount of tax on that price, right? So for example, let's say for a product with 100 rupees, right? This is the selling price. You have to add tax on this, right? So tax will be, let's say, 28% of 100. 28% of 100 is nothing but it's 0.28 multiplied by 100, right? So which is nothing but 28 itself, right? So you simply have to add 28 on top of this, which will be the tax that will be sent to the government on selling of this product, right? So this is how it's calculated, and we are going to exactly perform this operation for all these products, right? Different tax bracket basically means that these products falls into different taxes are applied on these products. All right, so here we'll be performing the same operation. I'll be using equal to because I want to perform a calculation here, and we'll be simply using the formulas that we have learned, right? So it will be a combination of sum and product function. Let's do that. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to take the selling price, right? Then we have to add the tax on this, right? So how tax can be calculated? This is 28%, which is 28% multiplied by the price of the product, right? And as we have seen here, this will be 100 plus 28, which is 128, right? And this is exactly what we are getting here. Right now, if you see, we have performed this operation using using the symbols of mathematics, right? We'll be converting this into by using the formula of Excel, right? So here you can see this is the multiplication sign that is occurring between these two, right? So I'll simply replace this with a product function and simply replace the sign here with a comma, right? So I can simply use a product function here, right? And these will be separated by a comma, right? And finally, we see a plus symbol here, which means addition operation is being performed, right? So for addition, we can directly use the sum function here. So outside, I'll use the sum function, and then I'll replace this plus sign with a comma and close this bracket here, right? So this is again 128, and this is how you'll be using this formula of Excel to perform this calculations, right? Same can be done for rest of the functions here or rest of the products here, right? And this is 129.8. You can represent this as change the formatting from general to maybe the currency, right? And you'll be able to see this rupee symbol. You can change the symbol to your currency. All right, so this is how it can easily be applied, and this is how you'll be applying the same wherever it is required.
right? So the one of you says here, profit of the owner is not added. So profit of the owner is already combined or added in the selling price, right? This is not the price of production of the product. This is the selling price, right? So here we'll be using the flash fill here for rest of the uh, products to get the final output, and we see that the values have started popping up, right? And these are the final, let's say, final outputs of the MRP, right? This is the retail price at which this product will be sold, right? And retail price is the B2C segment where uh, the product is directly sold to the customer, right? So all the products that you buy from supermarket or any other, stores outside, this is the price that is available, and this is the price that is offered to you for every individual products. Right, so this is how you can simply use the addition and product function. All right. Right, so this is how you can easily calculate the MRP. If the tax bracket is given, the selling price is given, you can simply multiply and add together. Right, so I hope everyone is able to follow this. You can simply raise your hands to confirm. All right, here let's see one more example of, right, let's see one more example of maybe product function, right? So let's say what we'll do is we'll create a table of numbers from 1 to 20, let's say numbers from 1 to 20, right? And up till the multiples of 20. What this basically means is we'll calculate the tables here. Let's say table for 1, table for 2, right? Table for 3, and so on. Let's say we'll calculate up till table of 10, right? And here we'll simply do this up to multiples of 20, which means we'll keep it 2 into 1, 2 into 2, 2 into 3, up till 2 into 20. Right, so like this, we'll be calculating the tables, or we'll be deriving the tables simply using the product function and the reference parameters of the key. Right, so product function will be majorly multiply two numbers, right? So this will be 1 multiplied by 1 here, right? Now, if you see, if we move one cell down, this says this should be 2 into 1, which should be 2 here, but here it's mentioning 1. All right, so here basically we need to mention the absolute reference here. Absolute reference is because since if you see here, these are the cells highlighted, blue and red. These are the values that is being taken, right? But here, if you see, we are taking the values from A6 and B5. So as we move one cell down, A6 will move to A7 and B5 will move to B6, right? But we do not want B6 to move, right? Why is that so? Because every time I want to multiply each of these numbers with 1, then only I'll be getting the table of 1, right? So to do that, what we do is we provide absolute referencing here, right? And absolute referencing can easily be applied by simply adding $sign before both of these, right? So you can simply use the F4 key in your cell, right? Simply use the F4 key to add the absolute referencing here. Right? Or you can manually add the $sign as well. That is also completely okay. Simply add the $sign before B and before 5. Right? So this will ensure that even after using the flash fill, moving cells down or towards right or left, the value that is being taken, will be absolute, which is the cell B5. Right. So now if we take this value, we'll be having, we are getting 2 as the output. Right. So here this will be, yeah. Right. So this is 2 as the output, taking the value from B5 only every single time. Right. If we move one cell down again, this is 3 into 1, which is 3, right? Followed by the next cell, 4 into 1 will be 4. Every time the value, second value is taken from B5 itself, right? So this is the absolute referencing that we'll be using in most of our cases when we want to freeze a value or we want to take a single value from a single cell every time. Right? Again, you can use the flash fill here, and let me just quickly edit this to get the outputs. Right, so this is how you can easily use and create the table of any number. Right, in the similar way, all right, in the similar way, we can create the table with the next number here, right? And again, I can use the product function and take maybe 2. We'll freeze this value, right? And how to freeze, we can simply add $sign before the numbers here. So I'll simply say add between C and 5. Once done, I can take the next number and calculate the output. Right, so this way 2 into 2 is 4, right? And same goes with the rest of the numbers here. 2 into 3, 2 into 4, 2 into 5, 2 into 6, right? 2 into 7, 2 into 8, and so on, right? So this could be a simple exercise to practice yourself working with Excel, right? You need to get familiar with these functions, because until and unless you get familiar, this will be very difficult for you when we talk about the uh, actual task that is involved in analysis of the data, right? So these initial few sessions are purely to get you familiar with the mathematics so that you can practice something to get a hands-on experience on these concepts, right? So and once you are able to get the hands-on experience, it will be helpful for you to understand and work with the data sets, right? And a proper, if any one of you, I can see a lot of you are a lot of you are not familiar with Excel itself. This is one of the I can say this is one of the tool or application that is used or that is existing for decades in the industry, and almost in every sector that you're working, you will be uh, you know you must have been using Excel in one form or the other, right? But still, I can see a lot of you not familiar with the interface, not familiar with the Excel cells, etc. So you just need a proper hands-on practice to get familiar with these with this particular platform or application. Right, it is just the matter of practice that you need to do, and it's strongly advised not to practice along with the live session, right? Because these live sessions are purely to walk you through the concepts. You can understand these concepts, you can simply uh, follow the session, and once done, when you need hands-on practice, it needs to be done at your end only, right? And this hands-on practice will help you to grow, right? Everything in data science is purely about having the hands-on practice. If you're putting enough efforts, right? If you're putting enough efforts on practicing these, you won't face any difficulty when your actual machine learning will start.
All right. Right. So this is how will be we can surely perform. I keep rest of it as the homework for you, and I'll simply edit this that you need to calculate from 1 to 50, right, up to the multiples of 20 for every table. All right. So this is how you can devote more time, have good hands-on practice, and then you'll be able to use these formulas very effortlessly. All right. So before wrapping up today's session, right, let me walk you through how this particular function, which is present in BODMAS, right, this can be represented using the equations, right? Because the calculation that we have done, this is manual calculation present here, right? Let me walk you through how this can be done using the formulas of Excel, right? So I'll copy this formula and paste it here, right? Now, let's see. We'll first start with something that is present in this bracket. The sum function will be used here because addition operation is being performed, right? So we'll simply mention sum function outside this and we'll remove the plus sign followed by a comma, right? So this is, and after every change, we'll check the output because if anything goes wrong, my output will change, right? So the sum function has been used here, right? Next, let's talk about this 2 raised to the power of 2 power function can be used here, right? So we'll be using 2 raised to the power of 2 using the power function, right? So this will be 2 followed by a comma, and then we'll close the bracket after uh, the second 2 ends, right? So this is 2 raised to the power of 2, where number itself is 2 and the power as well is 2, right? So again, the output remains same. All right. Now let's talk about the multiplication, right? So the multiplication is performed between 36 divided by 6 and 3, right? So we'll simply use the product function here. All right, we'll use the product function here, and the product function will be applied between 36 divided by 6 and 3, right? So make sure we do not have any function for or division, which is why we'll simply mention 36 divided by 6 as it is, right? So again, the output remains unaffected. And finally, we have this plus sign that is applied right from the power function until the end of the equation and between the product function. So we'll again replace this with the sum function. So sum function will be applied on top of product function here, right? We'll replace this plus sign with a comma and close this bracket at the end. All right, so this is how your function or the formula can be converted into a formula that uses Excel functions, right? So there are only 2 things, those are left out. First is this division operator or the division operation, 36 divided by 6. And next is this subtraction that we are performing between the output of power function and the output of the sum function, right? So since the formulas are not available for subtraction and division, which is why we'll be keeping it as it is and we'll calculate these manually. All right. So yes, this is how this particular equation can be converted into an equation that is represented using functions of Excel. All right. So yes, guys, I think that was all for today because all the topics that we have mentioned, right? We have covered these topics. Uh, because the next topic that we'll be discussing will be the logical operations. And if we start today, we won't be able to finish in time, right? So we'll not start that with today. We'll start it in the next session itself. All right. I'll devote the last 10 minutes for any doubts that you might have for today's session. And otherwise, we'll wrap up the session in next 10 minutes. Right. So any doubts that you have, you're free to ask now in the chat section. Else, if any one of you, want to drop off from the session, you're free to do. We won't be discussing any new topic for today. Right. So when you will get started with Python programming, you have time to get started with Python programming, right? You have almost 1.5 months from today where your Python program will begin, right? Logical expressions belongs to which subject? It is not belonging to any subject. These are general logical operations that will carry out. You can apply these logical operations even in day-to-day life or even in the field of programming, even in if you belong to any specialized field like maybe electrical engineering or electronics engineering or mechanical, right? Or the automobile sector, everywhere these logical operators can be used, right? This purely depends on what use case you are handling. Right. So homework, I think I already gave you. This is your homework for today. You have to create the tables up till from 1 to 50 up to the multiples of 20. Right. So this is the homework for you today. And you also need to reproduce this data uh, at your end, right, by watching the recordings of the session. And once you're able to do that, you'll have good hands-on practice, right? So you need to produce the output all by yourself, not by following the session, right? So in case if you have any doubts, then you can refer to the recordings for the output, right? Otherwise, try to solve these problems on your own. Right, this will help you to build the problem solving skills, which is again one of the most important skills in the field of data science. All right, so everything that we have practiced in today's session is your homework, and the special homework that I gave you is you have to create numbers or tables from 1 to 50 up till the multiples of 20, right? Now, talking about where you can buy the Excel, right? So you can simply make a subscription. Excel is no more, a product anymore, right? Earlier, Microsoft used to release one-time purchase license, right? But now they have shifted to subscription-based services, right? So you need to subscribe to these services of Microsoft Office, right, which can easily be found on their official website, right? So simply browse the official website of Microsoft and you'll be able to see Office 365. You have to purchase the complete Office 365. You cannot purchase only Excel, right? So there are a lot of things that comes along with this. Like you have Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, right? X Access, you have Microsoft Teams. There are multiple products in different bundles, right? So you can go through which bundle matches your requirement. You're free to make a purchase of that. Right. So what will start next once your foundations are over? Please refer your curriculum for the same. Right. Please refer your curriculum uh, from time to time to understand what exactly will be the topics covered. All right. So it's always advised to work on the latest version of the technologies, right? Because there are a lot of things that depends on the version that you're using. All right. So make sure you always use the latest version so that you're updated with the latest features. All right. So yes, guys, I see no more doubts coming up. So let's wrap up the session for today. All right. I'll see you in the next weekend and we'll start with the logical operations. All right. So yes, thank you everyone for joining the session. I'll see you next weekend at the same time. Right. So all right, guys. So thank you and you have a good night.